Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and yes, that's right, folks. We're back. We're back with the Truth Attack. And I've got a good show all laid out for you tonight, I think. Well, let's go through the preliminaries. We are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the broadcast network operating and the shows coming. So, if you enjoy the information, the lectures, the discussions, the revelations, the guests and the hosts on the other shows on the network, we sure would appreciate it if you could find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website, if you're not there already, listening online, and get signed up as a monthly subscribing member, even if it's as little as $10, $20 a month. We need your membership dues to keep the broadcast network operating, and we are the only network in the country bringing you the bottom line on the income tax fraud, the monumental constitutional fraud that it has been exposed as by the Supreme Court in the recent ruling last June in Moore et al. V. the United States. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. And I think I want to talk about the kinds of nonsensical responsive pleadings we're getting from the Department of Justice all over the country. There's not one single Department of Justice attorney in the country that is able to counter the information and more effectively. So we'll get to that in a bit. But for the last month or two, I've been talking pretty much exclusively on the show about the income tax, the constitutional fraud it's been exposed as under Moore. And if you want to get informed on that, you can find your way over to tax-freedom, taxfreedom.com with a hyphen, tax-freedom, there it is, taxfreedom.com, and read the articles about SCOTUS and the broken tax system. It lays out how everything has changed since 2018 and Trump's new tax law when it was enacted by Congress under the constitutional authority of not the 16th Amendment and not as a direct tax under the amendment, but as an indirect tax under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. Which only taxes foreign activity in foreign persons and in foreign places by impost, exported goods by duty, and commodities, licenses, and corporations by excise. So where's the authority to tax the American people, their earnings, as alleged income? There's no indirect basis for taxation by impost, duty, or excise that can be found in sources of gross income, rent, interest, dividend. None of these things are a legitimate basis for indirect taxation. It can only be used as the basis for the tax being owed if it, as it has been, wrongfully and erroneously alleged that the tax is a non-apportioned direct tax under the 16th Amendment, which is what the government and the courts have been lying to the American people about for 45 years. Actually, since the end of World War II, they've been lying to you about this. It's a monumental constitutional fraud. And the only person in government who's innocent is Donald Trump, who hasn't been a politician for 40 years and enacted the change in the law in 2018. Everybody else in the government is guilty as sin for the sedition they have been perpetrating, the treasonous sedition, because they've been enforcing not constitutional taxation, but communistic taxation, specifically the second plank of the Communist Manifesto, which reads a heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax. And that, my friends, is where you find non-uniform graduated tax brackets. It's in the Communist Manifesto, not the Constitution of the United States, where all taxes are required to either be uniform or apportioned to the states for collection. You can't discriminate against the American people to drop the poor into one class and the rich into another and the middle class into a third and have different tax rates for all three different people, groups of people. That's patently unconstitutional. That's not uniform taxation. It doesn't matter if the wealthy in New York are treated the same as the wealthy in California, and same for the poor and the middle class. Because geographical uniformity doesn't apply to the citizens. It has to be absolute uniformity. Otherwise, the government could pass a law that says it's okay to tax blacks differently than whites, or Jews differently from Christians in Islam, or gays different from straight, or men different from women, or old different from young, or Italians different from Irish. And that would all be perfectly okay as long as each group in every state was treated the same as every other group in all the other states. And we know, of course, that's nonsense. The government, Congress, has no authority whatsoever to discriminate against the American people on any basis, including income, productivity, and amount of earnings. This is fraudulent communism, not constitutional taxation. And it is the reason why your country is deteriorating more and more every year as the currency sinks into oblivion and the quality of life deteriorates. For as goes the currency, so goes the fate of the nation and the quality of life enjoyed or suffered by its people. So if you want to get informed and find out just how big the monumental fraud called income tax has become, find your way over to taxfreedom.com and start reading. Okay, so before I get any deeper into this and forget to do anything else with the whole show, I want to talk a little bit today about current events. Because like I say, for the last 6 weeks, I haven't been doing that, focusing exclusively on the income tax fraud and the exposure of that fraud created by the Supreme Court. So let's talk a little bit about current events. Well, what can you say? Donald Trump is an absolute genius. Absolute genius. And Elon Musk is probably the best wingman in the history of America. Look at what Trump has done. By putting Musk in at Doge, he has all the Democrats ranting and raving about Elon Musk. Every day, the Congressman Maxine Waters and the other idiots, Schumer, are all out there raving about Musk. Oh, he's auditing. It's unconstitutional. There's nothing unconstitutional about eliminating fraud and waste. Nothing. It's particularly not unconstitutional if the money isn't constitutionally authorized to be spent by Congress. There's no authority for Congress to spend money in Africa or the Ukraine or China or anywhere else for that matter. And all of these expenditures are completely unconstitutional expenditures by Congress working to establish a global socialism, a one world government that uses the dollar as the one world currency. So they're spreading it all over the world, diluting its buying power for the people here at home by printing it into oblivion. But because Musk is the one doing the work with his 4 guys, all of whom are working without pay, by the way. These guys are working without pay to solve the thing. I bet Musk is probably paying them some salary, not charging the government. But they're all working without pay, including Elon Musk, to find waste and fraud. And they're doing a good job of it. And they think they can find, hundreds of billions, if not possibly $1 trillion, half the deficit they've talked about. And of course, they can find that. Whether or not they'll be able to eliminate all of it is really the only question. But because Trump is out there doing the dirty work on the stage and appearing in front of the cameras, the Democrats and all of the Democrat liberal organizations are going freaking nuts over Musk. And they're not saying a word about Donald Trump. You remember what happened the first time? Trump couldn't open his mouth without getting assaulted, sued, manhandled, pushed around, and destroyed, euphemistically speaking, on the news programs where he wasn't allowed to speak or show up to defend his positions or what he was saying, most of which was oftentimes a joke that the media then went and tried to portray it as he's being serious. Then, of course, he's using the same tactics again now. He's got Musk playing the front man and absorbing all the heat. Musk doesn't care. He's immune. He's as wealthy as he ever needs to be. You can say anything you want about him, write anything in the news. It's all fraud, and he knows it. And so does all of America. They just make the stuff up. He's one of the best and smartest and shrewdest businessmen in the country. And that proof is what he's done with Tesla, which is actually 5 companies in one, not just one company. He's got SpaceX in there. He's got Starlink in there. He's got energy utility. It's 5 different companies. It's not just Tesla. And he's doing a job, and on top of managing all of that, he's now auditing the United States government. And isn't it nice to finally have someone who's smart enough and quick enough to look at the numbers and go immediately, there's something wrong here. Somebody look at this and find the details for me. Finally, we've got someone capable, and I think Trump is capable of doing that too, but if he were doing it, they'd be going nuts. So they're ignoring Trump, and he's working behind the scenes to get all sorts of deals done. He's freeing the hostages. He's forcing Hamas to release hostages. He got the hostage back that was in prison in Russia. He is moving with lightning speed. They've shut down the border. They're enforcing the immigration. They're arresting the illegal alien criminals, not the housemaids and the gardeners. Only the criminals. And they're putting them away. They're sending people to Guantanamo Bay to make sure that liberal organizations can't easily interfere in the immigration deportation moves, because it's hard to get legal counsel out at Guantanamo. It's outside legal reach of the U.S. system and takes a lot of money to argue it should be allowed. So they're doing everything right. They're moving at lightning speed. He's fulfilling the campaign promises that he made in getting elected. He's going after everything. And again, he's using Elon Musk to play the role on the stage and take the heat from the media. It's just like water off the back of a duck to Musk. And Trump doesn't have to respond or say anything. He can continue working behind the scenes at the White House, knowing he's pulling all the strings, because this nonsense in the Democrats that Musk is a shadow president is just stupid. He's only doing what Donald Trump wants him to do. He's not doing anything on his own, and everything is being coordinated out of the White House, not Elon Musk's offices at Tesla. So the Dems are just hysterical, nonsensically acting, literally, what can you say? Stupid! Stupid! And I'm still asserting today, as I've been arguing for 6 years, it's not the Democratic Party anymore. The Democrat Party is gone. It transformed into the Socialist Party of America under Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren shortly before Joe Biden took office. It's not the Democrat Party anymore. There's no center positions, just left, liberal. It doesn't exist. It's become extreme, radical, far-left nonsense. 1,000 genders. Oh, girls and boys sports. Money housing illegal aliens instead of veterans. It's just billions being spent housing in fancy hotels illegal aliens instead of Americans. It's just all nonsensical sedition being perpetrated by the Democrats to create as much chaos and anarchy as they possibly can, because they know from Saul Alinsky's playbook that before you can get the people, the population, to accept even a conversation about a new government, you have to make the existing government a failure in everything it does. The more chaos and anarchy you can create within the existing systems, the closer you get to having that conversation about a new form of government. And they've got it all waiting in the wings. A new constitution that establishes a socialist system globally. It doesn't preserve the rights of the people. It empowers the federal government as though it were God, with the authority to regulate, manage, and dictate to the people of the world every single aspect of their societal existence. Okay, I think I hear the first commercial break coming up. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and let's just get right back into it. When we came up on that commercial break, I was going through some current events about how Donald Trump is pursuing the fulfillment of his campaign promises. And of course, he's been moving at light speed and using Elon Musk as the front man to take the heat. And it's worked. The Democrats and the liberal media are all going nuts about Elon Musk, and they're not really talking about Donald Trump much. He's been left behind. And he's also throwing out distractions that drive the media into insane, nonsensical hyperbole when he talks about things like redeveloping Gaza, which I don't think he's serious about that. I think what they're intending to do is set up some kind of UN protected zone that will preserve peace there. Trump's not going to go over there and develop it as in America. He's just throwing that out there to get the media to get stupid in there. And same thing with buying Canada. And now I'm not sure it's the same with the Panama Canal, because you actually have a Chinese threat there. And if Panama doesn't come around and get back on board with the U.S. rather than China, it's possible he could go down there and take the canal back, because that was part of the original treaty provisions that ceded authority over the canal to Panama. But anyway, the media goes completely nuts talking about Canada and Gaza and the Panama Canal instead of Donald Trump and getting the illegal aliens out, changing the energy rules to try and bring down the cost of energy, because as I've been saying for 4 years, that's where the inflation started. It didn't start because the American people were running around with wheelbarrows full of cash looking for a loaf of bread to buy for $100,000. It started because Joe Biden drove the price of oil from $50 a barrel to $130. And that cost increase became an energy cost component increase in every single product on every single shelf in every single store in every single city in every single state in the country. When energy goes up, the price of everything goes up. And when energy goes down, the prices of things can be stabilized and possibly go back down if they go down enough. Now, of course, you never get all of an inflationary increase back, but you can get some of it back this time because it wasn't real inflation. It was artificial increased costs imposed by the stupidity of senile, dementia-ridden Joe Biden, who had no idea what he was doing or the consequences of what he was doing throughout the whole 4 years in office, because he was incompetent to take office when he was elected. And I told you that 4 years ago. And he proved it year after year for all 4 until he ultimately completely collapsed in the debate because he wasn't qualified to run for office. And if you're not qualified or competent to run for office, you're not qualified or competent to serve in it. And have you noticed? He's completely disappeared. Completely. He's got nothing to say because no one's writing the script for him. He doesn't have a teleprompter anymore. That was the only reason why he could talk in the first place. That was pretty obvious when he started reading the directions, the behavioral directions off the monitor. Pause. Wait for a thaws. He'd read anything. Wasn't there a comedy about that? How just put it on a teleprompter, he'll read anything you put on the teleprompter? Yeah, well, that's Joe Biden. Right out of the comedy. And of course, Pam Bondi has now announced that they're going to do what I said they should be doing 4 years ago. Prosecuting the liberal politicians, city and state administrators interfering with the immigration law under Title 8, Section 1324, which makes it a crime to house, aid, shelter, fund, transport, or assist in any way any illegal alien in entering the country or staying here. This is a crime under Title 8, Section 1324. Prosecute them. Any city council that votes in sanctuary city laws, which a lot of California and New York are now trying to do to oppose Trump's immigration. Anyone that does that, implements those at the city, county, or state level, should be arrested and prosecuted by the DOJ for aiding and abetting in violation of Title 8, 1324. It's really simple. Arrest them, prosecute them, and then drop the prosecution when they repeal the legislation and start assisting with the detention of the violent illegal criminals instead of assisting them in escaping arrest and detention and deportation. The hell is wrong with the Democrats? They've gone completely insane. Completely insane. Oh no, keep the criminals here. We're going to interfere and help keep the criminals here. Oh, yeah, right. Good idea. Let's have more girls raped and murdered by illegal aliens, like Venezuelan gang members. Great idea, guys. Let's have more apartments and condos taken over by the gangs. Let's have more illegal criminal cartel gang warfare on the streets of America. That's what the Democrats appear to want. That's what they allowed to occur. And don't tell me illegal aliens don't commit crimes as much as U.S. citizens. That's nonsense. There are over 1 million crimes committed by illegal aliens every single day. And they're not reported as crimes because they're drug deals that neither side participating in the deal reports, but which are all illegal. And everybody knows it. And everybody knows the deals are occurring. So don't tell me the illegal aliens, the cartel gang members, aren't committing millions of crimes. They are the crime in the inner cities. They are the crime. Oh, they don't commit crime. Liar! Liar! The statistics aren't reported or recorded, but they are committing millions of crimes. They're just not murder or robbery or assault, but they're crimes. They don't tell me they don't commit crimes. That's just a lie. Like everything else the Democrats have been pushing. Just a lie. And let's talk a little bit about Elon Musk and his ability to perform as opposed to others, shall we say, and leave it at that. You know, Elon Musk's company, Starlink, inside Tesla, was awarded nearly $1 billion, $900 million, almost 10% of the $10 billion that were let under the $42 billion congressional legislation to install all over the country rural internet for people who couldn't afford it, where the networks, the phone companies, the ISPs hadn't gone because cabling up 100,000 rural homes who can't pay doesn't pay and they're not going to do it. They only cable up an area where they have enough subscriptions to let them in. So there's no cabling in rural America. A lot of it is too rural to get cables to. And the Democrats wanted to put in place legislation to try and provide internet access to the poor. And I don't really have a terrible problem with that, even though it's not really the kind of thing they should do. But information to that access and that kind of access has today almost become essential. You need it to get by and to do things. And if you're poor, you really need it to find work and arrange things around your problems in life. So I didn't have a problem with them doing that. And they put 42 billion on the line. They let 10 billion of it out. And how was that 10 billion allocated? Well, Elon Musk put in a bid from his Starlink company, and they won 900 billion because their bid was the best. To 900 million, I'm sorry, was the best and cheapest bid. They said they could hook up rural internet users for about, I think it was $1,100 to $1,300 per house. And that was the lowest connection bid they got. So they were given 1 billion, 10% of the contract dollars being let. And Joe Biden, yeah, right, Joe Biden. Joe Biden said Elon Musk would be worth looking at. In other words, he directed his Department of Justice and other agencies to discriminate against Elon Musk. And what do you know? They immediately did. They canceled his $900 million contract to install rural internet for rural users at $1,000 a home, basically. They canceled it. And what's happened since? Oh yeah, the other companies, they're hooking up houses for $100,000 a home. $100,000 a home. Those contracts got left in place. But because Elon was worth investigating, the contract for $1,000 a home got canceled. And how many homes have actually been hooked up? Zero. Zero outside of what Starlink did before the contract was canceled. Zero. They haven't hooked up anybody. 42 billion to hook up no one in 4 years. Why? Because they tied it to DEI hiring. And there aren't any DEI employees who know how to string cable from telephone poles in rural neighborhoods. That's all done by men who've been doing it for years. Can't hire someone to do that. They'll die the first day on the job when they touch the wrong wire on the pole or fall off the ladder. Good God, man. Elon Musk was performing at $1,100 per, and you went to $100,000 because Joe Biden is a piece of crap. Politicized the DOJ and aimed it at his political enemies and non-supporters. Absolutely disgusting Orwellian perversion of the constitutional republic. And if I hear the Democrats rant and rave about democracy, democracy, democracy anymore, I'm just going to puke all over them. It's not a democracy, you idiots. It's a constitutional republic. It's a democratic republic in the sense that we have a system of one man, one vote. But it is not a democracy because we do not have a system where the majority rules. We have a republic where the law rules everyone uniformly, supposedly, under the Constitution. So you don't have a constitutional system anymore. One law for everyone, not different laws for different groups. So, Starlink was hooking up houses for $11 a pop. Biden shut it down, weaponizing the DOJ, going after his political enemies. A disgraceful Orwellian display of weaponized lawfare. And Merrick Garland went right along with every bit of it. All nonsensical, unconstitutional baloney. So Pam Bondi is going after New York. I think it's Hochul and Letitia James and who's the DA, Bragg there, have all been named in a DOJ suit to sue the New York officials for violating Title VIII, Section 1324, and aiding and abetting by setting up sanctuary cities that oppose the DOJ and assist the illegal aliens in evading them. And these lawsuits should, of course, be filed, what, against Illinois, California, Massachusetts, New York, Maryland, New Jersey, Connecticut, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, all the places where the liberal administrations are setting up sanctuary city policies. Okay, I think I hear the next commercial break. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and I guess I should probably hurry up and finish up here with current events so that I can talk at least a little bit about what we're getting in the court from the government and the judges themselves after the Moore decision. But first, everyone's talking about the tariffs that Trump wants to impose. Oh, it's inflationary. They'll raise prices. Nobody will be able to afford anything. That's not the way tariffs work, unless it's a sole source product from that one country that's been tariffed. What tariffs do is they level the playing field between the two countries on trade. And that's what Trump is doing with them. He's adopting a policy where if you tax our goods, we're going to tax yours. You tariff us, we tariff you. You want free trade? So do we. Get rid of the tariffs, and so will we. But until then, as long as countries like China and Mexico are cheating by using virtual slave labor, tariffs to raise the price of products only from those countries makes sense. And what will that do? Sure, it will make one of your choice options in purchasing that product more expensive. But it won't make any of the other choice options more expensive. You don't want to buy from Mexico or China? Fine. Buy from Italy, buy from Germany, buy from Japan, buy from South Korea. You don't have to buy from America. You don't have to buy the product from the foreign country. So it doesn't become inflationary. It just makes one product within the whole spectrum of products of that type. It raises the price of one product from one supplier. It motivates the buyer to buy from other sources because the tariff makes the previous source a little bit more expensive. Now, that doesn't mean all the products are more expensive. It just means you get to buy from a different supplier if you want to keep the same low price or close to it as you had before with the tariff. So it's not inflationary unless the product being tariffed is a sole source. And we don't have a whole lot of sole source from outside countries. We can make just about everything here, and we do. And admittedly, a lot of it is more expensive than the products from the rest of the world. But hey, if you tariff us, we tariff you. So that's what's going on, and it's good policy. And if you look what's happening, the other countries are already reacting favorably. They're dropping their tariffs in order to avoid the tariff Trump is threatening to impose, because the tariff on their products being imported into the U.S. will be substantially more harmful to them than their tariff will be to one of our companies in their little country. So they're harming themselves by imposing these tariffs, and a lot of countries like India have been imposing large tariffs on things like motorcycles to keep the U.S. manufacturers out of that market intentionally. So that's what Trump is doing. He's leveling the playing field and ending the trade relationships where foreign countries have taken advantage of America and the American government. And it's for what? Stupidity? Dementia? You tell me. And that's going away. And what that will also do is promote more production, jobs, work, factories, manufacturing here in the United States to avoid tariffs. You put tariffs on Mexican cars and the plants will move here and produce instead of in Mexico. What's produced in Mexico will be sold elsewhere in the world, not here in the United States. So sure, the Mexican car goes up in price a little bit here, but not all the other cars. Just buy from a different supplier. Oh, okay, so we're running out of time here. I guess we should go ahead and try to do some of this. I told you I'd read from you, I'd talk a little bit about what we're getting from the courts. This is in the United States District Court for the District of South Carolina, Columbia Division. I'm going to read a bit here and jump in to explain what the court's doing and why it's not honest. Defendant has filed a motion to vacate the void judgment for lack of subject matter jurisdiction of the district court. Defendant asserts the court lacked subject matter jurisdiction because federal personal income tax is an indirect tax, not a non-apportioned direct tax. He asserts the void judgment against him must be vacated. Defendant purports to bring his motion under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 33A and Rule 52B1. And he throws in a footnote. A motion for new trial under Rule 33A must be filed within 14 days of the guilty verdict unless there is newly discovered evidence. Defendant's motion is based on a Supreme Court case, not newly discovered evidence. Well, the Supreme Court ruled it's not a direct, non-apportioned tax, it's an indirect tax, and that's new evidence because they ruled that it was a direct, non-apportioned tax. So the Supreme Court's ruling overturning 40 years of erroneous precedent, I think, can be argued as new evidence the court should take into account in its rulings. And Rule 52 defines harmless and plain error and is not a vehicle for bringing a motion for new trial or to vacate the judgment. Well, wait a minute. Plain error rule from Black's Law. This rule that plain errors affecting substantial rights may be considered on motion for new trial or on appeal, though not raised in trial court, if manifest injustice or miscarriage of justice has resulted, is invoked on case-to-case basis. But there must be sound, substantial manifestation, a strong, clear showing that injustice or miscarriage of justice will result if the rule is not invoked. State v. Myers. For there to be plain error warranting reversal absent objection, there must be legal impropriety affecting defendant's substantial rights sufficiently grievous to justify notice by reviewing court and to convince it that, of itself, error possessed clear capacity to bring about unjust result. State v. Harris. Doctrine which encompasses those errors, which are obvious and highly prejudicial, which affect the substantial right to the accused, and which, if uncorrected, would be an affront to the integrity and reputation of judicial proceedings. U.S. v. McCord. Now, that doesn't sound to me like it only refers to harmless and plain error. That sounds like pretty serious crap under Rule 52B that can be addressed if those circumstances are in place. And anytime the court has conducted a criminal trial and convicted a defendant without the subject matter jurisdiction to do so, you have every single one of those circumstances present in the case. So this judge is just lying. Just lying. Thinking the pro se litigant won't know the difference between plain error and the doctrine, which establishes it's not so plain after all. Defendant filed, that we're going on now with the order of the court. The government filed a response in opposition, arguing defendant has not brought his motion via proper procedural vehicle, and it should be treated as one under Title 28, Section 2255. It also briefly addressed the merits. Defendant filed a reply contending there is no constitutionally granted taxing power in the form of a non-apportioned direct tax, and thus the court lacked subject matter jurisdiction at his trial. He cites the Supreme Court's holding in Moore v. United States in support of his position. After defendant filed his reply, the court entered an order notifying defendant of its intention to construe his motion to vacate as one brought under 2255. Defendant was afforded until January date to notify the court whether he wished to withdraw the motion, amend it to include all grounds he wished to raise, or confirm he wished to proceed under 2255. Okay, now here's the problem. The court wants to withdraw the motion under Rule 52, which covers constitutional error without a time limitation, is the proper rule to attack this under. The court doesn't want to admit that, so it says it wants to consider it under Section 2255. Oh, isn't that sweet of the court? Section 2255 applies only to prisoners who are still incarcerated in prison. This man got out. He's not in prison. 2255 isn't a viable option. The court is setting up the pro se litigant to immediately dismiss the motion the minute they agree with the court to review it as a 2255. This is a seditious, disingenuous, crooked judge screwing with the constitutional rights of the defendant. They've had it plainly and clearly laid out. There's no subject matter jurisdiction to enforce a direct tax against an individual person. It has to be apportioned to the states. You can only enforce, the court only has the authority to enforce indirect taxation by impost, duty, and excise against individual persons. Direct taxes must be enforced against the several states. Moore repeats that several times. The Supreme Court repeats that in Moore. Let's go on with the order. Defendant did not file a response to the court's order. Instead, he filed a motion for hearing and an additional attachment, the Moore case. Defendant requests a hearing to address the question of the appropriate legal authority under which the defendant's motion to vacate and void judgment may proceed. He argues the plain error rule works to prevent manifest injustice that he asserts has resulted from his conviction, which he asserts was obtained without subject matter jurisdiction. He contends he can thus proceed under Federal Rule Criminal Procedure 52B in bringing his motion. As an initial matter, the plain error rule defines plain error, as the court previously explained. Yeah, liar. ECF does not provide a mechanism for bringing a motion challenging a conviction. Yes, it does, because no rule anticipates that the courts and the government will operate for 45 years unconstitutionally and repeatedly convict hundreds of thousands of people for crimes that don't exist. That was unimaginable, inconceivable that the courts would ever be allowed to operate by a Supreme Court for over 50 years, unconstitutionally enforcing the second plank of the Communist Manifesto as a direct tax against individual persons instead of the several states. Inconceivable. So the rules don't provide for this, other than this 52B and some others in civil, possibly. Despite the court explaining this to defendant, he chose not to respond to the court's inquiry about bringing his motion as one under 2255, choosing instead to rely on Rule 52B, and I explained why. Defendant challenges this court's subject matter jurisdiction over his tax charges. Challenges implicating the court's power to hear a case can never be forfeited or waived, United States v. Pittman. The court therefore considers defendant's motion a jurisdictional challenge. So the court's going to entertain it under 52B after all. Isn't that a surprise? Oh, what a sweet little piece of crap this girl is. Congress granted district court subject matter jurisdiction over all offenses against the laws of the United States, 1832-31, Title 18. That is the beginning and the end of jurisdictional inquiry. See also United States v. Moran. Holding subject matter jurisdiction defines the court's authority to hear a given type of case, and Congress gave district courts authority to adjudicate all offenses against the laws of the United States. So now she's asserting Congress through the law, gave the courts the authority to enforce a tax that doesn't exist. And they can use the statutes to enforce any tax against any person, including a direct tax. So this is just stupid, nonsensical, irrational baloney. You can't use the statutes to enforce a tax that is constitutionally never granted and is prohibited. The statutes can't be used to overcome the limitations of the Constitution. That's insane. Why have a Constitution if the statutes are going to rewrite every provision of it? This girl has lost her frigging mind. She's gone berserker in her desire to get rid of the pro se and uphold the government's de facto enforcement of the Communist Manifesto, its second plank. Defendant has disputed the IRS's interpretation of its tax code for many years now. He previously challenged this court's subject matter jurisdiction in his criminal case because he asserted it was actually innocent of the charges. The court held a hearing and overruled his argument regarding subject matter jurisdiction and never ruled what subject matter jurisdiction was based in under the Constitution. The record of the case has no declaration of subject matter jurisdiction in it, and the court can't enforce a direct tax against an individual person instead of the several states. We'll be back next week with more. Oh dear. I left the fan on the whole time. I hope it wasn't heard in the background. Oh, I gotta stop the recording. Hey, gotta stop recording.